One of the terms that has kept returning in nearly all discussions, but has not yet had separate space devoted to it, is the 5G technology. Although most of our minds are on the civil use of the new infrastructure for sending huge amounts of data in no time at all, let's devote a moment to consideration of the threats and opportunities that 5G offers the military, the defense, the special services. In that effort, we will be assisted by Riho Terras, member of the European Parliament, Erika Borghard, Assistant Professor at the Army Cyber Institute at West Point and Senior Director and Lead at Task Force 1, Cyberspace Solarium Commission, Nikodem Bończa-Tomaszewski, CEO of Exatel, Joseph Evans, Technical Director for 5G of the US Department of Defense, who in turn will all be assisted by their host, Teri Schultz, freelance reporter at Deutsche Welle NPR.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to the highly awaited, from what I heard from former panels, session on the military use of 5G technology. And I would regret to announce that Erika Borghard has just informed us that she will not be joining us, but I have three esteemed panelists who will definitely be able to carry the weight here. And I have to say, I first started speaking about this conference with Isabella Albrecht at the NATO leaders meeting last December in London. And she asked me if I would like to participate, and I'm very thrilled to do so. But who could have imagined how difficult things would get between then and now? And I would just like to add my congratulations, as others have done throughout the day, to how well this has been run. I've been on a lot of online conferences, and this has just been a really stellar example of what can be done. So I guess as a cybersecurity forum, you are a model for how to manage the space. So moving ahead, I will take the privilege of asking each of my panelists a question to kick us off, but I very much want to leave plenty of time for those participants who are joining us online to have a chance to ask experts. We are winding down the second day, and they won't have a lot of time left to participate. So in addition to encouraging my panelists to join the networking space afterwards, I do want to leave space for them to ask each other questions, and also to bring in the public. And also, please share what we're learning with hashtag CSGlobal20. Here in Brooklyn, for a very long time, we have talked a lot about the benefits and risks of 5G technology, but it's mostly on one side of town, and that's the European Union side of town. And we're talking about the integration of the technology in civilian infrastructure and the benefits and risks, and whether Huawei should be included or not. And a lot of that conversation has been colored by the US opposition to European partners and allies using Huawei in their infrastructure. So we are going to be talking a lot about that. But we're going to be focusing here on the other side of town, and it really is just over there from my house, and that is NATO and the military applications of 5G. There are going to be such an exciting host of exciting number of ways that 5G will be used in the military. It's mentioned there in your program: hypersonic weapons, drones, robots, both in good and bad ways. If we've got the technology, so do others. And so my panelists today will start talking, will move ahead the conversation on how to keep the technology secure. So we're going to start with Joe Evans. Thank you very much for joining us today. And there's been a lot of discussion about the U.S. military's implementation of 5G. You have just put out a new report from the Pentagon, and you also are moving ahead very quickly in testing 5G at up to 12 installations. So I would like to hear from you right now, Joe, on what we already know about the battlefield applications of 5G, how it's going, and what we're finding out from your testing.
Great, thank you. So let me start by describing a little bit about what we're doing in the overall program, and then I can put some of the specific testbed activities in context then. So our overall goal here is to accelerate both the technology and the security aspects of DoD's use of 5G. So we have a three-part program. The first part is about hastening DoD's adoption of 5G. So that's our accelerate part of the program with at-scale testing. Mentioned the 12 sites. That's part of that particular activity. Another piece of the program is, the second piece of the program is what we call operate through, which is ensure that U.S. forces can operate wherever and whenever they deploy using 5G technologies, both in terms of spectrum as well as cyber aspects. And then the third part of the program is what we call innovate, which is looking at next G technology, 6G, 7G, and beyond. In terms of what we're emphasizing in the first part of the program is this idea of accelerating DoD's use of 5G through these deployments at sites across the U.S. The activities there range from kind of behind the lines type of use of 5G to things a little closer to the tactical edge. And so the first set of sites, so it was four sites: Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany, Georgia; Hill Air Force Base in Utah; Naval Base San Diego; and Joint Base Lewis McChord up near Seattle. Those four bases really emphasized really things like logistics. Logistics were kind of transshipment from ground facilities to ships, or smart warehouse technologies for warehousing, storage, maintenance of vehicles, things like that. We also had some the work at Joint Base Lewis McChord looking at AR and VR for training and battlefield use. And then at Hill Air Force Base looking at spectrum, dynamic spectrum sharing. So those are the first four bases. Those sites are just beginning their experiments, and so we are just in the process of bringing those online really in the next few weeks. So those are the first four. Another one, Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. We are in the process of bringing them on a month or two later than that, and that will look at disaggregating command and control functions. So separating different parts of operation centers so that you can then start to make things a little more difficult for an adversary in terms of targeting and so forth. So those are the first five. We also have 7 other sites that are part of what we call our tranche 2 of bases. And those sites are looking at things ranging from very much core 5G technologies, kind of a pun there, literally looking at the 5G core technologies, how you make those different instances of those, different implementations, including open source implementations, how you make them interoperate, and also what are the security concerns with those particular 5G core applications, ranging from that to very tactical types of things, looking at use of 5G on ships and at the peer side, as well as the use of 5G in tactical operation centers and combat operation centers in the field. So a pretty broad range of uses of 5G in a military context. One of the things that we are trying to emphasize in many aspects of the program is dual use of technologies between the commercial world and the military world. So, the smart warehouse work, well, that is very much applicable to the commercial enterprise as well. Speeding logistics, whether you're, whatever shipment company you're talking about, wants to be able to use those same types of technologies. And so we, are looking at many of those things that are dual use because that both helps the DoD. It ensures that the military gets technologies that are useful at a great price. So we're not building our own custom systems, but at the same time also helps the commercial world in terms of providing an early test bed or sandbox for their advanced applications, as well as their underlying technologies, radio access network and core network technologies. So that's kind of an overview of what we're doing at the bases, and I'm happy to elaborate on other parts of the program as well.
And as you say, it is very early. We don't have a working system yet, and it's still very much in discussion and debate about who will be providing that system, which is a key question here. I'm going to let Riho Terras talk. And Riho now is a member of the European Parliament, but he has served also as the commander of the Estonian Armed Forces, which is an interesting combination, which has put him on both sides of the question about how to provide safeguards, possibly through legislation if necessary, for 5G systems, but also being very excited and anticipatory about the opportunities that 5G will provide on the battlefield. Riho, are you confident, now having seen both sides of these arguments, are you confident that there is a way forward in the very near future to safeguard the technology while letting it expand and amplify its real benefits for military applications?
Well, I think you're good afternoon, everybody. You have missed one thing in my biography. I worked 2 years, and I'm still working in the robotics company called Millennium Robotics, producing world best unmanned ground vehicles for the military and civilian use. So I've been involved in this technology debate in the last couple of years, and it makes me cautious. The one thing which I want to go back to history, and if I would be in the 3D audience, I would ask the audience, what was their invention, Queen Elizabeth Invention of the Year award? Which invention got this award in the year 1991? And people might think things they will never come to what it was, because it was a little widget inside of the Guinness beer can in order to make the foam head look nice after you open the can. And you would think, why is that relevant to that discussion we have? Because that is important for some beer drinkers in Ireland, but for most people in the world, it is important that the second place got hypertext transfer protocol, or otherwise called as internet. So 1991 was the first time where internet was invented, and people decided that the beer foam is more important than that. And this mistake has been fatal for everybody else understood. But there's one other very important thing. Last digital invention before that was email, 1973, and that was a military invention. And until that time, always military was driving the research and development, and was ahead of the technology. But starting from the internet, we lost the track. And right now, be it in 5G or in other, in other robotics technologies, military is trying to jump on the already flying plane. And therefore, it is not meant to be a military standard. So it has so many holes in it that to make it safe is very difficult. Second thing, we are already competing for the space in 5G. Even it does not yet exist, we already have problems to compete with the civilians by them taking bandwidth away. So it brings to the point, military needs to use it, military must use it. We must find ways how to use it, otherwise we will lose again. But on the other hand, this technology is not meant to be military. And the handicap of it is the security of the network. Military is used to use military radios, wave jumping, be encrypted, secure, and etc. But in the 5G, the physical infrastructure is endangered. Everything can be jammed, everything can be listened to. You have to just have better technology than your adversary. But other than meshnet, or meshnet, the 5G is relying on the physical data centers and the physical infrastructure. And if you take out a data center which provides, say, radio antennas around it, then the whole net will disappear. So what I want to say is we need to look at it in the way that it has to have a backup, or at least in the battlefield management, it always needs to be backed up by a conventional radios, a conventional old-fashioned way. Other thing which I have discussed with our scientists in my company is why the hell the unmanned vehicles need lots of information exchange. We want to make the unmanned vehicles autonomous, that they can operate on themselves and just receive orders from short, very concise orders from the soldiers and do everything themselves. So you don't need this a load of data which you can push through 5G nets. So they are things where it is useful for sure. I am sure in the training environment, absolutely important. I think the base infrastructure to protect military infrastructure, military bases, very important. By hypersonic weapon systems, I think if the hypersonic 5 Mach and more weapons will come, then to defend and protect military or civilian infrastructure against that kind of threat, the 5G quick, short period information exchange, loads of information, it is fatal to be ahead of the hypersonic weapons. These are the ways where I can see very good use of it. But since it is a civilian thing, it has its problems for the military from my point of view. And of course, the last thing is important, who is building the hardware. And if it is Huawei, then you can be sure that you will be listened to, that you can be switched off if necessary. So the strategic autonomy of the system is another aspect we need to look at. It is very modern technology. It is not yet there. In Europe, we're fighting about how to regulate it, of course, in the parliament. And China has run away from us far. Russia has run away from us far away. Even Switzerland, on its small way, is full covered by 5G. Europe is not. US is not yet. So these are the challenges I see in this discussion with the 5G. I hope I was clear enough and you have heard me.
We did hear you, and you perfectly teed up our next speaker, Nikodem from Exatel in Poland. Poland believes that it has a model, a hybrid model of state and private industry in order to develop 5G nationally, and that this could be replicated throughout Europe, possibly throughout the world. I'm sure I'm not describing that in the most technically correct way, Nikodem. So please explain, what is Exatel's hybrid model that you are moving ahead with in Poland on 5G? Microphone, please.
We believe in Exatel, we believe that in the future the 5G, 6G, 7G technology will play the most important role on the modern battlefield. And of course, the big revolution which will come sooner or later is that on the modern battlefield we will have autonomous weapons, and basically soldiers will disappear from the kinetic spectrum of the war, and this will be more done by robots in the future. And 5G, 6G, and so on is an excellent environment in terms of technology, telecommunication technology for such future battlefield. So basically, our idea is that we should build in Poland a wholesale 5G network, which would be run by both state and private operators, and also will provide services for the Polish military. And we have lots of gains, we think, using this model. First of all, it's cost much less to everybody. All the parties save lots of money on their infrastructure. Second is that we have a lower electromagnetic emission, which is also very important, especially that we are in Europe becoming more and more aware of ecological problems. And the third part is that such network will have military-grade security, cybersecurity level, provided to all the users, also to the civilians and users. So in this model, we can provide a top-notch security for very important part of Polish cyberspace, which will be constituted by 5G. And this is very important because we think that it's obvious that the future war will start not with cannons, but it will start with a cyber attack on the critical infrastructure. And by having top-notch 5G wholesale network in Poland, we will be able to defend all kinds of infrastructure, not only military. And this is new, and this is new, but this wasn't possible in the 4G and 3G technologies. These technologies cannot provide cybersecurity we need for the military grade operations. They also didn't provide total virtualizations, so the network slicing was not possible, and also the latency of the signal was very maybe not very slow, but it was much slower than in 5G. So for us, it's like we are looking on the whole cyberspace as a whole. You have to protect, and that the future war will be like touching everybody. So creating separate military or internal security network, 5G network, for example, only for the military use would be not a good solution in this matter.
Well, that's not usually how things work anyway, because you need the grander, size of production. In this case, Joe Evans, when you listen to Nikodem explain how that system is being developed in Poland, does that sound like something that would work for the level of security that you believe military operations will need in 5G? And why hasn't the US come up with a system like this? Obviously, there are a lot more players there, and a much bigger space to deal with. But does that sound like something that would work for one nation to come up with a hybrid system that then could be replicated?
Well, I think I should start by saying that we definitely view 5G as driven by our industrial commercial partners. And so really, we can't possibly match, even DoD, US DoD can't match the type of investment that the commercial world is putting into 5G. So a couple numbers I like to cite is, the $350 billion of investment in capital expenditures alone in the US expected between now and 2025. And, another number that I find amazing is one company, Samsung, in 2018, 1 year alone, their R&D budget alone being over, $16 billion. No DoD program in communications and networking has ever been that large. And we really feel that we have to then align ourselves with industry in order to be able to utilize this technology. And really, we must utilize this technology because it is the connectivity fabric for the modern world, and we can't replicate that feasibly. We must work with industry. That said, we are working with our industry partners on different security solutions. We do think that there are, to go back to some earlier comments, we do think there's a range of places where 5G can be used, or range of scenarios. As we look at the trade space between threat sophistication as well as then local control of the network, there are places where we can obviously use 5G even straight out of the box. So if you're talking about, say, continental U.S. In relatively low risk types of applications, you can certainly use 5G. Our commercial partners are definitely trying to do their best to secure their networks. It just makes sense for them as a commercial offering. As we move upward in threat sophistication to, say, peer military adversaries, and where we're using those systems, say if we're using those 5G systems out closer to the actual battlefield, that's where we start to need to be able to push the sophistication of our security solutions. At some point, as was said earlier, we exceed what you want to do with 5G, and you may need to go to tactical radios and that type of technology. But somewhere back from that edge is a mixed situation where you have perhaps a moderately sophisticated threat, and you have some local control of the network. That there aren't there is an adversary hardware in the network, perhaps, things like that. In those cases, we believe that you can secure the 5G systems sufficiently for DoD use. What we're doing is working with folks in industry to identify where the gaps are between what they're offering in terms of commercial offerings and what we need for different DoD use cases, and then investing in projects and programs to try to close that gap in order to provide the security we need. So that's part of our operate through part of our program. We think there are different models of how you might implement partnerships between say telecom providers and DoD, but we are in early stages of understanding the best ways to go about that. Over.
Riho, if I understood you correctly, and I think Joe referred to it as well, you said, why do you need all this connectivity in some applications? I mean, and he said specifically, there may be times when you don't actually need it, but when you look at the fact that military adversaries will be definitely exploiting it to its fullest potential, don't you need to keep up? I mean, isn't that some of the problem here, that Europe has definitely acknowledged that it didn't put enough funding into Nokia, into Ericsson, into European systems, and now Huawei simply is, light years ahead of everyone else, and that's why countries went ahead and used elements of Huawei even before they were certain they should secure it. Do you see that part of the argument, that sometimes you use it simply because you can and because the other guys will be?
Well, there's one thing I want to correct, which our Polish colleague said, that the human beings will disappear from the battlefield. I don't see that happening. I think the future word is manned-unmanned teaming, and we need to be interoperable, very flexible, modular, and we need to have open architecture, which also says that we need to use all technology we can, be it 5G or others. But it should not be the solution for everything. We should always think about the possibilities, how we back it up by other means. And today we are not mature enough. Huawei and China has primarily dealt with it because he wants to conquer the economic world. It is a business solution. And exactly what was said, that the big companies of the world, they have more money. I don't see nations having that much money to put in place their national 5G, which can be commercially used, and then perhaps Poland has enough money. I don't see it happening in Estonia. And the other thing is how to deploy with it. I mean, it is a defensive structure can be based on the 5G. And again, it can be taken physically out. And what then? But if we, for example, go to Africa, to Afghanistan, places like that, the 5G will not be given. So if we build our mentality on using 5G, and I've seen it in Mali, where our soldiers used mainly 4G, our mobile phones, to communicate. And almost the sun, they were attacked because it is a signal which can be civilian, not protected signal, which can be used by the adversary. And 5G today, it is still a mobile phone. It is still a mobile phone network. It is meant to be for that. It can be used differently, and I'm sure technically it is possible already to say we can use it much broader, and we don't know. But right now it still is. I think Europe needs to invest in it. Of course it does. And I think they already understand that. And Germany especially is planning to use it. But not yet is a military lead. We will get the slice, as it always was mentioned, the slicing. We will get the slice of it perhaps, but the big cake will be eaten by the civilian companies, because people need that for the civilians. And then if the real war situation comes, where physically rockets, missiles, and shells will take out parts of this infrastructure, then we need to have a backup, and that is what I'm saying. I don't say that that is not useful, but I say we need to have very clear military-grade radio structure, mesh network, where we can. I understand bit less exchange, less data, but still absolutely important. We need to have that. I am conservative on that part.
I would like to bring in a question now from our audience, and because it's a thread that we keep mentioning, I would like to have each of you address it, even though it is not about direct battlefield applications of 5G. And that is from Katarina Tani, and she says, is the Huawei threat real or imaginary, and what's its potential impact? And this is something, of course, that between the transatlantic allies has been a huge issue. And Joe, I would like to ask you also, with the U.S. insisting that the Europeans not use any components of Huawei, haven't you automatically set back your progress? Is there truly no way that these components can be made safe? Because before the UK said it wasn't going to use them, it said it could use them. Most European governments have come to the same conclusion, that there are safeguards they can put in place, and they haven't sworn off it yet, including Estonia. And I'm interested also, Nikodem, in whether Exatel's system would completely ban the use of any Huawei components. But I'll start with Joe, because this has been such a neuralgic issue here in Brussels about the U.S. Really, to some extent, seeming to bully European allies on this issue many times, threatening to cut off Five Eyes cooperation. And you've had some success with that, not you personally. The administration has had some success, increasing success. But for example, Germany still says it won't ban Huawei. So is that setting you back in development? And are you convinced that there simply is no way to use that technology because of the Chinese government's potential influence?
Well, certainly, I'd start. Starting with the question from the audience, I would definitely say the threat is real. We do, believe that it is, certainly it does you no good to, put threatening equipment in your telecom network. It is a weakness that you have to acknowledge that the equipment being provided could be, affected by state actors to meet their needs, whether it's for surveillance or other types of activities. So we definitely believe that the threat is real, and that we should be using telecommunications equipment provided by vendors that are not under the influence of state organizations. With that said, we also believe that that's a necessary condition, that we do not want to have gear in the network that we know is going to be a problem. But being the Department of Defense, we have a nuanced view of that, in the sense that we need to make sure that when we do go and have to deploy to places where there is telecom equipment from problematic vendors, from high-risk vendors, that we do have options. We need to provide options for our forces. So we've really, we do think it's important to emphasize that these vendors are high risk. They do, provide a substantial cyber and other risk to nations that have chosen to use that gear. But we'll also attempt to operate in other ways, operate through that type of adversary impediment. So I think that we really need to emphasize that that it is the nature of those high risk vendors being controlled by state actors that is the real threat here, and basically why go out of your way to create security problems in your network if there are alternatives. One of the things that we are doing through our program is making sure there are alternatives. So we don't think necessarily that Huawei is the be-all and end-all of 5G technology. We believe that there are vendors in the U.S. and in allied partner nations that can meet the needs of the marketplace. And we are working with those to make sure that they have an opportunity to excel, through our programs.
Nikodem, will your system be used without Huawei, and is that feasible?
Well, in Poland, like I said, we are trying to take a holistic approach and look beyond our current problems and foresee the problems of the future. And basically, our policy toward all the vendors of cybersecurity and telecommunication technologies is that we don't trust anybody, especially if it comes to the technology which will be used for the military sector. We have Polish military is, of course, one of our very important clients, so we are especially sensitive in this area. And in Polskie 5G, in Polish 5G project, we are going to the business model of the company which we are going to create. We implement the solution in which VP, the member of the board responsible for cybersecurity, will be appointed by the state, and decisions of what vendor to choose will be made on his level. So, because in the 2020 we can have a problem with, I don't know, Chinese vendors, but in the 2025 we can have problem with some other vendor. It can change. So we want to have a permanent solution, a systematic solution for the future. And also in Poland we have the government has a special Cybersecurity Commission, which will be deeply involved in the decision making towards basic cybersecurity in Poland. This is something new that was created, and this is also the institution which will maybe, or a group rather, that will help us fight the cybersecurity threats in the larger scheme, because right now everybody is excited about the war between United States and China on 5G, but this is just one aspect of the problems. And it's just one, and I think it's a big problem, but it's not the problem which overshadows others. So this will be simple, I think, and very effective in the future.
And Riho, you said that if countries, if governments, if systems use Huawei, they can be sure that the Chinese government will be listening or will arbitrarily shut it down. Why then do you think the EU has simply left it up to governments to follow these suggestions in the toolbox and not said, we don't want that in the system that we're building now, including, as I mentioned before, your own national government?
Well, it is an easy answer. It is the best price-benefit solution right now. And since it is a civilian infrastructure, the civilian companies, they try to find the best solutions for as small money as possible. I can bring you an example of 5G network of Finland, and their government said they don't care, because this is the best solution on the market right now. Even so, Nokia is producing its own bits and pieces, or Ericsson, but they run with their mobile phone company runs with a Chinese Huawei equipment. Most of the 4G is already with the Huawei equipment, and they take into consideration that Chinese might use that information, and they will. I mean, they will build in backdoors to every level. And therefore, it is very challenging for the military. And it's very difficult for the civilians who pay that from their own pockets to tell them that now you need to get rid of this equipment and buy new ones. So for sure, it needs to be a time where they can change, because this technology is not lasting that long. So if you have a Huawei technology today, in 4 years' time, we can put some restrictions on it to say that certain infrastructure needs to be produced somewhere else, say in European Union or US or Euro-Atlantic spheres. But it is not that easy to take it away. But the Chinese have legislation which tells them that they have to build this inside the structure, and they have to bring all the information they get from the universities from all over the world back home. Otherwise, they will be punished. So it is legal statement in the law of China. So why should they not follow their legislation? And therefore, whatever Huawei people tell the world that they don't do it, they must do it. Otherwise, they will be sitting in jail. So therefore, I'm sure that they do, and we have to live with it right now, because the other solutions are either too expensive or not capable enough, and put some more money on developing our own systems.
That's right. That is the law, and I've checked into it too, just to make sure that we're not all repeating things that aren't true. And it is the Chinese law. I'd like to broaden out our discussion though from just Huawei and that kind of threats into some of the things that I heard on panels earlier in the day. And in 2 panels ago, Melissa Hathaway was just absolutely adamant that cyber resilience was far, far below what is needed. And when we're talking about cybersecurity, obviously every military use of 5G will be subject to being able to keep the cyberspace secure. It can all go bad if there's a cyber attack that can take down all of these systems that would then be more dependent on this technology. So from each of you, again, I would like to hear, do you think, is that an overly pessimistic view of how resilient the security is around this technology now? I know that NATO has not been talking a lot about it in previous years, and knows that it needs to step up now and is putting more into it. But have we, as we've lagged in the development of the elements themselves and in the technology itself, have we similarly been too slow in creating resilience in a system that would protect the 5G? I'll start backwards now with Nikodem.
Well, I think that the 5G is the first cellular technology which can be truly cyber secure by design. In 3G and in 4G, there were holes which were intended mostly because of the pressure from the international security community. So you could, for example, backdrop fake BTS in order to listen to the communication, or to interfere with the communication on 3G and 4G. And in 5G, we don't have such holes. Of course, the standards which are right now put for the civilian market, which are developed, they can be and they should be made more resilient. But even now, they provide much more resilience in terms of cybersecurity than 3G or 5G ever could. And what's more, we are right now looking at the project which are bringing the 5G security to the even higher level, and there are projects which claim to develop 5G technology which would be which would provide completely secure communication between two users without even possibility of operator to eavesdrop on their communication. So this is a very, very big change, and that's why I think that there is a high potential in militarizing the 5G technology. And what's more important, I wanted to be clear that in the future, like I said, in the future, the most kinetic work will be done by the AI war machines. Of course, we will have spec ops, we will have soldiers which will give commands, the command structure, but the kinetic strikes and on the massive scale will be done by the machines. And 5G is a technology, and then 6G, which will be on the battlefield. Of course, you can always interfere with 5G, but you can interfere with any electromagnetic wave, even if you use UKF. It doesn't matter. You can always, and this will be the biggest problem: how to operate, how to counterbalance the trials to suppress your electromagnetic waves. This will be the huge challenge. But if we are not going back to the World War II level of telecommunication technology on the battlefield, I think the 5G is the best way. And also, we have to remember that in practice, cellular technologies we are not as delicate as we think. We've seen application of LTE technology on the battlefield in Afghanistan by both sides, even by the Taliban. We also saw the very wide use of cellular phones and 4G technology in the war between Ukraine and Russia. And also we have many African states which are in the very bad shape, but they have lots of cellular technology which is working. So, and also there are conflicts there. So we can see that it's not like we are convinced in Europe that in order to have cellular network, you need a very strong state, you need regulations, and you need very high level of technology and high level engineers to provide such service. It can be provided on a very simple level and can be very, very resilient. But of course, like in army, they say, one is known, two is one, so you always will need redundancy.
And I wasn't asking about the technology itself being resilient, but about the security of the technology being resilient. Joe, would you like to pick that up?
Sure. And so, I think that we do need to acknowledge that with 5G technology, there will be, more opportunities for cyber mischief, just because many things in 5G networks are becoming software defined. So, the underlying, technology for 5G core is really software defined networks. Increasingly, there's interest in using software-defined radio capabilities for the radio access network near the cell tower, and so I think there's this move to bring more essentially software traditional computing types of architectures closer to the radio head at the cell tower. So that's a risk that we face with 5G networks. A couple of the ways that we're looking to try to mitigate that risk, one of those is what we call zero trust architectures. So the kind of philosophy for securing networks, since for many years now has been kind of a perimeter defense, defend along the edges of the network with firewalls or air gaps. So you're not actually interconnecting networks. We think that that's basically no longer feasible in a hyper-connected world where you do want to be able to connect everything from your autonomous vehicles to your logistics systems, to your telemedicine systems, and so forth. Name it what we think might be kind of capabilities in the future. In order to support that hyper-connected world, we need to have a different security model that's not based around firewalls and perimeters, but rather is looking at security throughout the protocol stack and throughout the network, from the handsets into the cell sites, into the radio access network, into the core. We think that there are lots of tools along the way to help us. Certainly, encryption and key management techniques are much more sophisticated than they were in years past. So that's a great a great direction and great foundation for what we need to do. And then 5G itself introduces some models such as slicing, it was mentioned earlier, for providing separation within the network. So we think there's some tools that will help us along the way. A real underlying set of principles. We think that open standards are very important so that we understand what's in the network, and we can, most importantly, then be able to do security evaluations of what's in the network in order to ensure that we have risks identified and mitigated.
And Riho, Estonia is typically seen as being ahead of its time in cybersecurity, having been the target of the first cyber war, of course. Are you confident that resilience can be achieved for a system like this, whether or not you believe it should be as widely implemented as the other panelists?
Well, I didn't say that it should not be widely implemented, but I did say that it has to have redundancy. I remember times only 15 years ago as we went around NATO countries and tried to explain that cybersecurity is an issue at all. And we were pushed away. Everybody said that is something only intelligence services deal with, and that is not what NATO should do or anybody else in bigger infrastructure. And then, of course, the cyber attacks, which were actually scratching the surface, happened 2007, and a couple of years later we had the Center of Excellence, which I personally signed the Foundation Acts. But what we found that time, and it is true today, the biggest hardware problem in the cybersecurity sits between the screen and the chair, and that is the human being, where the most mistakes come. So it will be always the case. Now, of course, we would try to protect, and the best protection to protect your data is not to be connected. And the 5G is on contrary, you want to be connected with the whole of the world. And then there will be lots of guys who are interested on how to misuse you. Cybersecurity is especially important in this issue, and I think Nikodem mentioned it a couple of times that it has to be taken care very carefully, and that it has to be organized by the state. But the problem is not all states can do it. In some states, the democracy is to that level that will not allow to interference in the private businesses, and therefore these gaps will stay. So I think we need to use the 5G technology as much as we can. We need to put lots of effort in the situations other than war, but in case of war, we need to have a backup.
Okay, our time is basically finished, but since we've been so dreary, I wanted to end on a more exciting note. Tell me, each of you, what is the next big thing we're going to see with the 5G breakthrough? Even if it's something I won't understand because it's too deep in the military technology. What is the next big thing that is achievable in the very near future? Politics aside, security risks aside, what are we going to see? Just quickly.
Yeah,
okay, Riho.
Cars. Driverless cars in the German highways speeding 200 kilometers an hour, and people ready to sit in them and trust the technology better than the human being, because technology is better than the human being.
Oh my gosh, I said near future. Okay, Joe?
It is near future. It is near future.
All right, okay. Not for me.
I think even more drones flying around, whether it's for military logistics or for delivery.
Okay, and Nikodem?
Well, I think that the early adopters of 5G technology will be the industry, and we'll see the factories completely wireless in terms of without fiber optic infrastructure, because 5G will let them automate all the process inside. So I think that this is really happening.
Okay, so definitely in the near future. Thank you very much to my panelists, Nikodem Bończa-Tomaszewski, the CEO of Exatel, Joe Evans, the technical director for the Pentagon's 5G program, and Riho Terras, a member of the European Parliament and former commander of the Estonian Defense Forces, and that stint where he helped, I believe, get a patent for the SACU cap. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly, but thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to our participants. And of course, thank you to the Cybersecurity Forum for having all of us. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it turns out that, as always, there is the problem that exists between the chair and the keyboard, PABCAK.